This fairy tale that white people are the mass shooters in this country, this is the hydra that just will not die. Every time we cut its head off, it just springs up a few more heads, a few more people trying to convince us of part of the greatest lie of our generation, the hoax of black victimization, the hoax of white racism, and they're trying to convince us that mass shooting is a white thing. I mean, how many times have we done the story? Mass shooting is a black thing. That's what the New York Times said. Just a couple of days ago in Philadelphia, we did a story about the Philadelphia Daily News, Philly.com. They did a story saying, yeah, mass shootings in Philadelphia. Over the last 10 years, they happen about every 2 weeks. That's 3 or more people getting shot in Philadelphia every 2 weeks. Hey, bad news, people. That's not white people doing it. That's the fellas doing it. And now we open up the paper this morning, open up my email this morning, and we just get one after another. Wichita, Kansas, Missouri, on and on and on. Why don't we just blow through a few of them, because that's really the only way we can show the deniers what's going on, by showing them.
2 young women gone, 23-year-old Joanna Tellis-May and her sister, 27-year-old Stephanie Tellis-May, the victims of a drive-by shooting. Police say it happened around 1:30 Sunday morning in the area of Northwest 19th Avenue and 60th Street. A group was gathered alongside a vehicle when police say another vehicle drove by and someone inside started shooting. The 2 women would not survive. 2 others were taken to the hospital in stable condition. Police say they tried to stop the vehicle involved, but they ditched the car and took off running.
No one was expecting this. This wasn't supposed to happen to them.
Stephanie was a medical assistant and Joanna a dental assistant, both building a following on social media with makeup tutorials and other videos. Family members say Joanna and Stephanie had big dreams, and it's heartbreaking to see it all taken away by gun violence.
Off of that, this scene here has been going strong for about 2 hours now. You see the white crime scene van, it just pulled up. We lifted the tape up there. This scene here, you see the yellow tape here in the foreground. Beyond that, the white tape, you're looking at a beige-colored house back there in the back. That's the area that police are focusing on. What police told us here just a minute ago, further down the other side of the street, you see more of that white tape. That's where they say that multiple shooters opened fire. So they're looking for several people at this point who opened fire at the 4 people who were out front of this house, this beige house. Not sure where they were, if they were on the porch or what they were doing, but it's a nice day, as you know, so they were outside. Of those 4 people, 3 of them had non-life-threatening injuries. There were 2 men, 18 and 40, both black men, and then a female, black female in her early 40s, their injuries non-life-threatening. Now, there was the 4th person who was shot, a black male in his mid-30s, his injuries a little bit more severe. And so,
Tiffany, there are many questions and few answers surrounding what led to the shooting. I found out there were 2 separate parties going on at the venue last night. I spoke with the DJ of one of the parties taking place, and he tells me the shooting started upstairs at the high school party taking place.
We was just downstairs practicing for Heavy's performance.
Keeman Garcia was the DJ preparing for a party in the downstairs lounge that was over before it ever started.
Like 2 minutes after the gunshots went off, you hear some more gunshots.
Garcia says it was chaos and panic as people from the party upstairs started running down to the lower level venue where Garcia was.
Everybody pushing each other, everybody running around, knocking each other over, tumbling, trying to run from gunshots pretty much.
Garcia says the shooter followed everyone to the lower level and continued to fire shots. Police say 2 unknown suspects fired multiple shots at the venue, striking 4 victims who all sustained non-life-threatening injuries. One of the victims was Darius Flournoy, a local rapper who goes by Heavy.
After everyone was out of the bathroom and stopped hearing gunshots, we all left the bathroom, and that's when I came to the stairs and seen Heavy down on the stairs on the ground with a whole bunch of blood everywhere. Makes you scared to do anything and try to have a good time here in Wichita, honestly.
This is what it looked like at that time at Chestnut Avenue near I-240 when 5 people were reported shot. We now know that number has increased to 7 people injured by gunfire, including a 16-year-old that was grazed. Police say 6 victims were in non-critical condition. The 7th victim was taken to the hospital in critical condition. We have learned the shooting was the result of a fight between multiple people. Police detained a female suspect shortly after arriving on scene. It is reported that the victims and the suspect all knew each other.
Sporting a white jumpsuit and handcuffs, 38-year-old Ernst Sherrard being escorted to jail by police officers Sunday afternoon after hours of questioning.
The way he killed him, it was crazy.
Sherrard accused of shooting and killing his girlfriend, 23-year-old Ali Normil, her mother, 48-year-old Nicole Guillaume, and her daughter, 6-year-old Elizabeth Fresnel. Neighbor Denise Jones didn't want to show her face, but says she knew the family well, especially Ali, who goes by Jeannie.
She was a sweet girl. Like I said, she always was high-spirited. She always had a conversation for you. And I always saw Jeannie in the morning or in the afternoons when she was picking her daughter up.
6-year-old Eliza Bell and her mother Ali found shot inside this Haines City apartment. The chaos unfolding around 7:30 Friday night after Ali's mother, Nicole, along with a friend, went to the apartment to check on Ali. But Sherrard told them she wasn't staying there. A short time later, Nicole returned, getting into a confrontation with Sherrard. That's when police say Sherrard shot and killed Nicole, then drove off.
They seemed to be very happy. He always was soft-spoken. He always asked how you was doing and everything. So whatever was going on the inside, it never showed on the outside.
Just hours after the shooting, police say Sherrard admitted to the crimes in this Facebook post, apologizing to his children. Jones now hoping the family will get justice.
They need to know why. That way their hearts and minds, will rest.
2 people have died following an overnight shooting in a Camden park. It happened at about 12:30 this morning in Bonaida Park at 29th and River. The victims, a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, died shortly after being transported to the hospital. A third victim is still being treated.
Is that we know that the actual shooting occurred near San Miguel and Coleman. We're being told that there were multiple victims, but we don't know the ages of any of those victims, so we don't know if any students or children were involved. And we're also told the good news is that none of the injuries as a result of that shooting.
Today for a man who killed 5 people during a South Kansas City crime spree.
Brandon Howell killed 5 in 2014, and today his trial came to a close. 41 Action News reporter Andres Gutierrez talked with family and friends of the victims after the trial. Andres, I know this is one step toward closure for them.
And it only took less than 2 hours for the jury to convict Brandon Howell on all the counts he faces, including the 5 murders from that fateful day.
We're obviously pleased that after 4.5 years, they brought to trial and he was convicted on all counts.
It didn't take long for a jury to find Brandon Howell guilty of all 11 counts he faced for the deadly crime spree he carried out in a tight-knit South Kansas City neighborhood.
It is the right verdict. It's the right verdict, but I never take it for granted until I hear those words spoken in a courtroom.
According to court documents, Howell severely beat George and Ann Taylor while trying to steal their vintage car. They later died at a hospital. Howell also shot and killed the Taylors' neighbors, Laureen Hurst and her son Daryl Hurst, and Susan Shakroon as Howell drove off in one of Taylors' vehicles. Since that fateful day in 2014, prosecutor Jean Peters Baker has stayed in close contact with the families of Howell's 5 victims.
Behind the doors here is a sizable group of people with broken hearts, but at least they know justice is there for them.
Loved ones packed the 6th-floor courtroom during the week-long trial.
It's been hard and emotional reliving it.
Just an empty place. Just an empty place in our hearts.
The verdict handed down today a relief for many.
There's a solid assurance about what's going to happen now, and that is that Brandon Howell won't be able to hurt anyone else again.
Another crime scene in D.C.'s Ward 7 last night. 2 people shot dead in an apartment building. A third person shot and wounded that fled the scene and crashed into a fence half a mile away.
These incidents are happening too often. And this tough on crime strategy that the mayor and the chief have been deploying for years and mayors before them has never worked for us.
The numbers show that while citywide violent crime overall is down about 14% over last year, here in Ward 7 it's up 5%. And while homicides are up citywide 21%, here in Ward 7 they are up over 200%.
Just 2 days ago, we had a lot of stop and frisk incidents happen in Deanwood.
Green says he believes random police stops are not working, that the city should focus more on violence interrupters, working in the community to find out what is leading up to violence and try to prevent it.
When you're just rounding up all the black boys that you can find and shake them out and see what drop, that's not getting to the real issue as to why people are picking up guns in the first place.
And the victims last night have been identified as 23-year-old Job McDowney and 21-year-old Desmond Richardson. A number of cities are focused these days on better intelligence, looking at the group of people likely to become crime victims or perpetrators and focusing on intelligence to try to stop it. In fact, the mayor has her Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. The question is, how effective are they? What are they doing?
Please, sir. I want some more.
Now, with that story of Brandon Howell, the guy who killed 5 people in Kansas City a couple years ago, he was just convicted this week. I lost count. He killed 5 people. Did he shoot 3 or shoot 2? Killed 5. I know he killed 2 with his bare hands. So I lost count. Maybe you guys could help me out. But I did it. But the last story from Washington, D.C., and all these stories are recent. The last story from Washington, D.C. was real instructive, because there's that little community activist going. They have these like neighborhood community councils in Washington, D.C., and the people have kind of appointed themselves the mini city council members. And that's what this guy was. And so he was out there telling us that somehow there was some relationship between frisking black people and then black people going out and committing a crap load of violent crime. I don't know exactly what that relationship is, but again, I'm not the guy sitting here giving us the brilliant answers to all the questions. I'm just the guy saying, hey, I keep my eyes open and I'm telling you what I see. And in Washington, D.C., that is a center of black crime, violence, and denial. We've done a couple stories. I think this is in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, a more complete treatment of this. D.C., Washington, D.C., the city government down there, they're at the tip of the spear on this criminal justice reform. And a couple years ago, they were in the middle of a huge program of letting the fellas out of jail. Instead of putting them in reform school, they would just say, listen, do you promise not to do any of this crap again, so we can just let you go home to your loving family where you can be a contributing member of society? Because think about the community, how much the community's missing out. Yes, that's what people say when we put criminals in jail. So they started letting black people out of reform schools for no reason whatsoever. A couple years later, they took a look at it and go, we kind of like did a little checkup on all those people we've been letting out of custody before their trial and after their trial, even though they were sentenced to like reform school. We did a check on them. Yeah, they killed over 100 people in Washington, D.C. And this guy's going, that tough on crime thing's never worked. Well, maybe you guys should try it sometime. Washington, D.C. is the place where at Georgetown University, you have a professor named Paul Dunbar who's telling black jurors, don't vote to acquit black people if you think black people are victims of white racism. That is a professor at Georgetown Law School. Think that has anything to do with stitches for snitches, witness intimidation, Bronx juries? Oh no, they've been down with let's not arrest black people in Washington for a very long time. Because we don't need any more black people in prison. Because the only reason there's so many in there now is because white cops in places like Washington, D.C. are picking on black people. And that's the only reason they go around shooting people and mass shootings in D.C. That's the only reason. And before you disagree with me, just know this, disagreeing with that does kind of make the black kids angry.